This is without a doubt the best car that I have ever owned. But it's not a cheap car. The maintenance costs on this thing are no joke. Now, I've owned this for almost a year, and let me take you through everything that's gone wrong with this car and how much it's cost to fix it. Now, I've spared no expense, I've fixed it all, but it hasn't been cheap. Let me take you through it. And we might as well start with the most expensive part. The 560 horsepower twin-turbo V8. Now, the first problem I had was the terrible servicing that Audi had just done. So I had to replace the oil filter, the air filter, the pollen filter, and all of the fluids, because Audi had marked on the service history that it was done, but it wasn't. So don't take your car to Audi, take it to an independent garage that you can trust. Next, the fuel pumps. The car has 2 higher pressure fuel pumps. The RS6 eats these in about 70,000 miles, and you start to get oil being injected into the engine. This one had it, and I have replaced these pumps, and that was at a cost of 576 for the parts, plus a couple of £100 for the labour. Now, those fuel pumps were requesting 12.3 bar of fuel, and they were only getting 11.5. So they definitely needed replaced. I'm glad we got that done. And of course, once your pumps are changed, you need to do another oil and filter change, because there's petrol in the oil and oil in the petrol. Best not to overlook that one. Next, there are coolant clips at the back here, which rub, well, there's firewall clips, and they rub on coolant lines and it causes a leak. That's now been repaired. There are a bunch of thermostats on this car, but there is a mapped coolant thermostat which is down in here somewhere, which throws an engine light. I had to have that replaced. The engine light came on the same day that I picked up the car, so that was fun. The calibration for the front sensors was out. 1 new sensor replaced. Car now has its parking system working again. If I take off the engine cover here, we can see where the turbos are. Now, what did we fix in here? O2 sensor at the back, had to replace that. The turbo bolts around the flange, there are 5 bolts on each of the turbos, and the bottom bolts were not tight and were missing. When I purchased the car, the catalytic converter on this right bank was completely collapsed and was blocking, so that has now been replaced. That is 2 new downpipes. Now, this was cheaper because I put aftermarket downpipes on. This car has 5 radiators, including the charge cooler, which is a water-cooled intercooler. There's coolant pipes here. But deep in the bowels here, there are some more shaped coolant lines, which have been replaced with a straight pipe instead of a curved one. That had to be replaced on this car. Aircon system. So you can see here it's missing a cap there, but it was also missing a functional coolant temperature sensor. So the pressure sensor and temperature sensor for the compressor was broken, and so I had to fix that as well to get my aircon and my climate control working again. In the back here, you can see that my factory heat shield has been removed. Now, that is because it was completely bashed in. Previous owner had kicked the crap out of it, and so I've replaced it with a gold heat blanket instead from Funk Motorsport, and there's more space in there for the downpipes, and it looks a bit bling. Underneath the turbos here, there is a very small oil screen that Audi have installed. Just a tiny little thing. Not an expensive part, but you have to get in there and remove the oil screen or replace it with the new revision of screen, and that is a big job. All of this has to come off. We have here an O2 sensor dangling from the vehicle. This is not a problem, because instead of running on 4 O2 sensors, the car is now mapped to run on 2. So there's an O2 sensor here that's dangling. Not really something wrong, but it is something that's unusual. These brakes, when I purchased the car, had been, I guess, skimmed with an angle grinder, so there was still a lip round the outside edge. Those have now been replaced. New fast road pads, new brake discs, new Brembo brake pads at the back. Not a cheap job whatsoever. On the passenger side of the car, or the near side as we call it here in the UK, there is a steering arm which was bent and had to be replaced with one that was not bent. And on this side of the vehicle, the self-leveling suspension had a snapped rod. We may not be able to see it here, so I'll get a little video from my toolbox. But in here, there is a little sensor rod which measures the height of the suspension as you go up and down. That was snapped off, had to be replaced. And also while we're down at this side had a faulty wheel bearing which I had to replace. But that wasn't too expensive because that's the same part number as they use on the Skoda. Passenger side again, CV joint. Makes a funny clicking sound when you're going around corners. It's a big heavy car, so it's not unexpected. That's now taken care of. Now this isn't something that's wrong, but I definitely call this a fault. Here is the CD that was in the car when I purchased it. Yuck. On the rear of the vehicle here, just the window, this isn't quite faulty yet, but it's definitely loosening off. Not ideal build quality there from Audi. Haven't fixed that, but it's definitely on its way out. And speaking of fittings, the rear diffuser panel, which sits underneath the vehicle here, if you see on the side there's a little screw and there's a washer combination behind it. There's the other side, it's right there. Those get rusted off. They only last a couple of years and then they need replaced. So for me, using this for towing my bike rack, I replaced these two little screw fittings. And on the rear of the car, the toe ball was completely corroded. So we had to have that filed down, sanded smooth, and then greased up. If I have a look down the exhaust pipes, you can see that there's not actually one giant oval exhaust, there are two that are in there. And that little flap there was sticking closed. Now that's not something that cost me anything to repair, I just got a scrubbing brush and some brake and clutch cleaner and loosened off the flap inside. That's another thing that you'll see on these cars. Sticky exhaust valves. In my first week of having the car, the rear tyre here got a screw trapped in it. And when I got the car, it developed a misfire, and I'm not sure which part fixed it, but as well as doing the fuel pumps, I also had to do 8 coil packs. I had to do 8 spark plugs. After the coil packs and spark plugs, oil change, another 8.7 litres of oil into the car. Now these are also very prone to stone chips in 2 locations. First, behind the driver's wheel, there's a small plastic panel at the bottom there. Other Audi models have a black plastic cover at that point, but not the RS6 for some reason. And the tyres are so wide, it definitely gets battered with stone chips. Second place that you see it is on this back corner here. Now there is a protection film over this area because Audi knows fine well that it's going to get hit with stone chips because the car's so wide, but you'll definitely see chips here. And at the back, on this edge, same as the front tyre, you're always going to get stone chips behind this extra wide 285 section rear tyre. When I bought this car, it was listed as a standard vehicle, not remapped. However, when we looked at the ECU, it had been flashed 16 times. That means that this car was previously remapped and then returned to standard to be sold to me. Fortunately, JLR Performance Vehicles look after me, and so I don't have to worry about that. Now, of course, there are more costs with the car, not just things that are going to go wrong. Insurance, for example, which surprised me. It was £700 a year with Aviva, who are one of the more expensive brands in the UK. But that included my fully comp cover and breakdown cover and all the rest. So £700 a year, which was actually cheaper than what I was paying for my Kia Sorento, which was 10 years older, and it was £750 a year. The other thing is tyres. You're not going to see change out of 300 quid a tyre. I think Pilot Sport 4S, you're about £280 at the moment, plus your fitting and disposal on top of that. So budget £300 a tyre. Road tax, unfortunately, this is in the £585 a year tax bracket, so that's no joke either. And fuel costs. Over the course of me having this car, if you do a motorway journey, yes, you can maybe see 28 or 29 miles to the gallon, but most often my average for the duration of the car was 20 miles to the gallon. I didn't even make it to 21 mpg. That works out at a cost of about 72 pence per mile just in fuel, because you need to put the super unleaded in it, especially if it's got a remap on it. So those are some of the more basic costs. So there you have it. Everything wrong with my RS6 in less than a year of ownership. So is this the best car I have ever driven? Yes. Do I have any regrets? No. Is it catastrophically expensive on maintenance? Yes. Or, well, at least if you're like me, and if it has a problem, you want to get it fixed, this car will be expensive on maintenance. Now, whoever buys this car after me will have a grand old time because I've fixed everything. The only thing really left would be, I guess, turbos, or, you know, if something major happened mechanically, but let's hope that never happens. Generally speaking, these cars are very reliable, but most of what I've described here is wear and tear. Would I buy one again? Abso-fucking-lutely. I will never have a better car than this one unless it's another RS6. This is the top of the food chain, boys and girls. If you're thinking about buying an RS6, the maintenance is no joke. Know what you're getting into, but you will not be disappointed. And with that, thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Take care, make good decisions, and we'll see you soon.